We're live.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Food for Thought seminar. My name is Niall Grieve from the Food for Thought team. Firstly, we'd like to cover some housekeeping information. This seminar is being recorded. As this is a Teams live event, you can't unmute yourself or come on camera, but you can ask any questions in the Q&A section to the side, and we'll cover these at the end. We're always looking for recommendations of new speakers to invite, so if you have any suggestions, please let us know at our email address, which is foodforthought@food.gov.uk. We're also looking for new members to join the Food for Thought team, so if you're interested in joining the team, please email us as well. Today's Food for Thought seminar will provide a deep dive into the SecQuAL project, in which Rick Mumford, Deputy Director of Science at the FSA, will chair, alongside presentations from the project partners. The SecQuAL project is an innovation-focused trial designed to enhance supply chain efficiency and combat food waste. The SecQuAL project brings together experts across technology, software and systems, food production, and supply chain regulation and assurance. Its primary goal is to improve the food traceability through the UK's produce supply chains from farm to fork. By harnessing cutting-edge technologies and collaborative efforts, the project aims to revolutionise the way the food industry operates, ensuring a more sustainable and transparent future for the global food supply chain. With that, I'll first hand you over to Rick Mumford for a quick introduction before we pass you on to our speakers today. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Niall. And thank you to everyone who's joined. It's good to see the numbers starting to creep up. We know that obviously this is the summer, so the one good thing that we will be doing is obviously recording this session, and we'll make it available. So if anyone's on leave or not able to attend this lunchtime, they've still got an opportunity to have a look at the presentation. So I'm not going to give a massive introduction to SecQuAL itself, because I'm going to hand that over to the consortium and the partners in the project, who are going to talk through their various work streams and the various bits of work they're delivering. But what I am going to do is sort of answer the question is like, why does the FSA get involved in a project like this? Well, you know, some years ago when we were talking to people as they were putting the bid in, and this is an Innovate UK funded project, and they were talking about ways of using digital technologies and smart electronics and smart labels, etc., to look at supply chain and look at the control of the supply chain and better monitor it and get better data around it. And it seemed like the opportunity there, and as it says in the title, is about reducing waste and improving quality. So it's got very, very commercial sort of motivations behind it. But of course, the other thing is that as the FSA, we are also interested in supply chain. And if you particularly think about the work of meat hygiene inspectors, we spend our days in abattoirs looking at the food safety aspects and looking at, you know, when animals arrive and the official vets, and then it moves through the process and doing that inspection process. So there's a lot of data that we collect about this, and there was this idea that can we then link up the sort of data that would be collected as part of the pilots and part of this project, and would it actually help in our regulatory work? I think the other thing that's very interesting for me is, and in my role as head of science, is that our job is to do technology foresight, so be out there looking for new opportunities, new technologies that we can use. And you know, talking to you know, initially the guys from CPI about the things they were intending to do around smart labels, it was very interesting to us to see how we can look at these technologies, get early sight of these technologies, and then see how they might be applicable with the sort of work we do in food regulation and food safety. So again, that's why we've been involved in the project, and that's why I'm very pleased to be able to present the work of the consortium today. And I will now hand over to them so they can talk to you about the work they've been doing. And I think first up is Disha, and I'll let her introduce herself and hand over. So over to you, Disha.
Thanks, Rick, for giving that comprehensive introduction about the whole project. So I am Disha. I work as an innovation analyst with LRQA, which is a global assurance provider. And LRQA, as in even and me, we are, so I'm the project lead for SecQuAL. So Victoria, can you please move to slide 2? Yeah. So the full form of SecQuAL is Secured Quality Assured Logistics for Digital Food Ecosystem, and it's a Innovate UK project which is aimed to digitize end-to-end, basically farm to fork supply chain using different technologies such as IoT device, IoT enabled smart tags and labels, and also use blockchain for creating that kind of transparency in the food supply chain that will help the companies see what is exactly going on in the full supply chain, and what are the and unlock the inefficiencies in the whole process and make it more better. So in this whole consortium, I'll just introduce like who all are the partners. So we have like different partners, such as first in the tech team itself, we have CPI, which creates which has been responsible to create smart tags and labels along with Black Bear and Pragmatic. And AMD, they are like advanced material development company, which specializes in tagging, which is like nanotechnology applications. And in systems team, we have IBM. IBM is the IBM Food Trust, that is blockchain platform provider. Consus has been providing like smart label verification and traceability system into the project. And we have the two key use cases for the project, that is pork and tomatoes. So for pork, the use case provider is Cranswick, and for tomatoes, it is ADAS and Suncrop. And we also have Food Standard FSA on the project as a consortium to guide the whole process. Uh, Victoria, can you please switch to screen slide 3? So all of these technologies that we have been developing in this full end-to-end supply chain, it basically helps in understanding what is going on in a pork supply chain, as well as that helps detect like where the waste has been generating, and the main reason for I guess it Clive will be the better person to like explain that, but I'll just give like a high level view. That is considering there is like every supply chain has some sort of waste, but if we have a good visibility of what's going on in a particular product supply chain, we basically are able to understand where the waste lies, or like what are the key waste generators, and also help us monitor what is going on in the supply chain in real time. So on this note, on this high level view of what SecQuAL is, I would like to hand it over to Clive to just explain, give a overview of why Cranswick got into this project, and what was their main objective uh, by being involved in SecQuAL.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Clive Stevens, Head of Research and Development for Cranswick PLC. We're predominantly producers of pigs, which some people will know, and poultry. Basically, we saw this project as an opportunity to reduce our food waste, basically. I mean, we've already got a lot of robust systems in place, being the size of organisations that we are, but it can improve our food waste, if you like. I mean, a lot of food waste, as Disha said, happens in the supply chain, but one of the key things that we were really interested in was food going into MAP. That can be 30%. It's not just a UK but European number, it's global. 30% of product going into MAP can be wasted through the supply chain. So as I said, we've got a lot of robust systems in our organisation, but what SecQuAL does, it allows us to join up all of those systems in a end-to-end sort of traceability. It also gives us sort of what's the word I'm looking for, our digital maturity. So a lot of detailed processes. It enhances our digital maturity from sort of farm to fork. Okay, Dave?
Thanks. Glenn, would you like to take over now?
Hi there, guys. So my name is Glenn Aitchison. I'm the engineering manager in charge of electronics at CPI. So I will be discussing the types of technology that we've implemented at the in SecQuAL, not only for the Cranswick site, but obviously for the for Fresh Veg site as well. So we develop a lot of embedded technologies, looking at mainly RFID technologies for sensing and for tracking. So we're looking at the data that is coming from and how we track that data. So a number of technical challenges that we've had on this project vary from high temperature processes, which we see at Cranswick. So looking at the data that comes through and the processes that the meat goes through for the normal processing. So we have a different sets of technology. Some of that technology has been standard off-the-shelf technologies, like high temperature on metal tags. Some of it has been custom technologies. So the standard RFID tags that we've been using for the technologies for tracking is just basic tracking of process through the tracking of beet through the process and veg through the processes. So one of the main development areas that we have done is basically looking at how we track the freshness of the food in the process itself. So obviously you can see a screen where you've got a set of pork chops in there. So in there is a label which basically tracks the freshness of that produce. So we're looking at temperature, moisture and volatile gases. And we've developed a tag which is a near-field communications tag, which uses on most mobile phones. Constants have developed an application to read that data, and what we do is basically house those technical solutions. So in there we have a solution that from Pragmatic IC. So Pragmatic run basically a reduced resource fab for creating plastic semiconductors. They generate their chips using very little resources compared to the standard semiconductor range. And we have developed a device that integrates one of their RFID chips with a volatile gas sensor that is produced by Black Bear. So as a trifecta of companies, we've developed a tag that measures temperature, measures moisture and measures volatile gas. That is fed up to the higher systems that then calculate the freshness of the food. Next slide, please. Yeah, so part of this is also this SecQuAL project is also looking at fresh veg and fruit. So the other partner that we're obviously partnering with on this project is Suncrop. So we've done a lot of trials and verifications at the Suncrop facility to verify that we can track from glasshouse all the way to packing line in the project. So for this project, we've used a lot of off-the-shelf RFID technologies, and really this is about bringing down the total cost of ownership of these types of technologies. So looking at how we can reuse labels, how we can reuse designs, how we can reuse packaging, and obviously feed that data up to the higher systems for processing. And that's me. Next slide.
Thanks, Glenn. James, you're next.
Thank you.
Hello.
James, can you go next, please?
Yeah. Sorry, am I now live?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So, thank you, Glenn. So, if we kind of the other bits and pieces in the project we've been looking at are kind of intrinsic tagging technology. So, as we know, barcodes and QR codes are used a hell of a lot in the supply chain industry to communicate information from one supplier to the next. And also things like RFID are used sometimes on farms to tag animals and produce. And also identification marks are used particularly in the pig industry for identifying batch and quality numbers. So as we'll see later, part of the task of SecQuAL is to link all of these pieces of information together. So AMD has been looking at some environmentally friendly ways of introducing RFID technology into the supply chain. So one of the key advantages of UHF RFID is a non-line of sight technique which can complement barcoding systems. And you can embed data within those chips to tell you something about the product, the nature of it, who supplied it, and also some of the advanced standards that we get today can also include things like expiry dates and batch numbers and serial numbers. So the possibility of encrypting data within RFID or NFC chips is ever greater than was possible before. So the amount of information that's available to the supply chain and its analysis is ever greater. So one of the things that we've been looking at within the project is tagging different things within the production environment and also within final product. So taking within the production environment, we've been able to tag DOLAFs, which are part of the meat processing function. So this type of technology would be able to keep track of information on a batch process. Indeed, you can also, with certain technologies, you can geolocate things like that. So you can monitor where work in progress items are around the factory. So the second example, which is in the middle there, is a carbon RFID on paper. So with the drive towards looking at the circularity of materials, paper and card packaging is becoming ever important or becoming a priority. So we've been looking at ways to produce an RFID which reduces the metal content such that packaging, so circularity or kind of recycling or pulping routes towards circular materials can be enabled. And then finally on the left, we've done an example there of putting an RFID tag on a crate. So you can additionally, you can either go for an option of a permanent tag, which CPI have been looking at, or you could look at indeed a temporary tag, which is just thrown away and recycled when that part of the journey is undertaken. So if we look at the next slide, just to give an example of a couple of tags that we produce within the project, we've been able to print that using our nanocarbon technology, and these perform quite well. They're fairly robust, and we can take that forward into the next bit. So really what we're trying to communicate here in the project is that certain technologies have applicability not only within business to business environments, but also to business to consumer environments. And I think that's where Peter's involvement in the project is enabled, and also within the internal production environment as well. So thank you.
Victoria, can we move on to the next slide, please?
Hi, I'm Peter from Consus. Our role for this project was mostly around the data manipulation and data gathering, but one of the most important parts was the joining of the hardware that you just heard about to tracking and tracing data. One of the key parts was, for example, receiving of the pigs coming in, then once they've gone through slaughter, going through the RFID scannings from the tags provided by CPI, and just making sure that every step of the process that was scanned or read or interacted with at any point went into a traceability solution which we designed. And at that point, at any point, you could then go and look back at the information. The key part of this was to get not only the traceability, which you have in most systems anyway, but also to go from there to allow that traceability to go further and out into the retailer, possibly out into even the public potentially. So to facilitate this, we've developed a couple of apps. One is for the producers to put information in, so they know where their product comes from, and the other, and the API side, which deals with the integration and the facilitation of the data from the hardware partners through to our traceability solution, and at the end to the blockchain provided by IBM, to make sure the system is fully robust and also can be trusted, because once it's in the blockchain, that data can't be manipulated in any way. What you can see here on the left is our consumer app. So one of the goals was to try and get this in the hands of the consumer. With the consumer app, you have an NFC tag. This tag is a mixture of technologies from multiple partners, Black Bear, CPI, Pragmatic, have been involved in the developing of the tag itself. And this tag is able to sense the gases inside the MAP and give us the real-time freshness information. So you can scan this tag and see if the meat is still fresh. It's basically a digital sniff test. Putting this tag there with just a freshness information isn't the end of it all. We can then say, well, we know what the product is. We've got an RFID tag, or NFC tag. And so you can see on the right side the results you get when you scan one of these tags. You get, what the product is, you get a nice little picture, because people like to see what you're looking at, what you've got, and then the information where it came from. We can get any information that is available from the entire supply chain, filtered down for what is available for the public use. If you do the next slide, please. So once you scan, you can find out where you came from. You can even find out who supplied it, a little bit about them, and it just puts the consumer more in touch with where their foods come from and who's involved in the production of that food, along with some information on the right side about the technology we're using, and just help people understand that the food waste is a big problem that we need to work on, and this is one step towards working on that. One of the big goals of the NFC chip and the reading on the consumer side as well is because we can get a real-time, it's not really best before date, it's a real-time freshness date. With that, you can remove the best before date from the packaging entirely and have people scan the food pack and get a real-time version of that, rather than the best guess, which is currently printed on most of the labels. Okay, next slide, and that's IBM's time.
Hi, Pete. Hang on. Apologies, got a few technical problems.
Sorry, and your voice is echoing.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, now it's proper.
Okay, apologies, got real technical problems with Teams at the moment. But anyway, let me start on this. So IBM, our role in this is to provide the IBM Food Trust platform for this. So we've got amazing technology been involved here that you've just been hearing about, that's collecting and tracking data, etc. But IBM provides a kind of thread where all this data can move into one system, and what that means is that as a user of that thread, you can look at forward or backward traceability, and that could be for lots of different things. So that might be for analytics, it might be for provenance or assurance, and that's useful for all parties within this, including the FSA. I don't know if you want to move to the next slide. Yep, so IBM's Food Trust platform, it delivers value for lots of different parties. So it can be for growers, it can be for processors, manufacturers, distributors, food logistics, right down to the consumer. So it really is farm to fork. But that requires data feeds, which is where all the technologies are that we've been talking about that can feed into this. But once those feeds of data are in the system, then we can start doing analytics and get some insight. Next slide, please. Yeah, we'll move on from that. So here we can see a scanning. So we've got a number of activities here that's taking data from different processes. Could be via Cranswick meat process, or it could be via Suncrop's produce, and each one of these activities would send data into the blockchain food trust platform. Now that can do several things. One is it can capture conditions. So for example, it might be a chiller that's the temperature of that chiller. It could be a grading of a particular meat product. It could be a certificate. It could be approval. Could be lots of different things, and they'll feed into the platform. Now, because it's an open ledger or shared ledger, it means that multiple parties can act on those. And there are controls, so the only people that need to see the data that they need to see. So what's pertinent to them. Next slide, please. So here we've got some examples of the analytics that we can get from this. So for example, here at the top left, we've got exceptions due to product quality due to lack of process compliance. So for example, it might be that a product goes down the wrong path or route within the process, which could mean that it's non-compliant. Or it could be that you want to look at the full details behind a lot. So it might be that you're wanting to investigate where something's been. And that could be looking forwards as well as backwards. So you might want to see, what happened to a product as it moved in the retail chain, or backwards from a retailer looking what happened in the production process. And then we can see, say for example, you've got a recall notice. If we look on the bottom left here, you can see where products have actually been, and we can trace that right back down to locations. So you're not having to kind of do a full quality product recall. You could just recall the products where necessary, and then you can go onto different dashboards. So for example, here we've got a retail dashboard on the bottom right that's giving information that's pertinent to the retailer, but that could be any kind of context. It could be retailer context, it could be producer context, or even grower context, whatever needs. So it could be an FSA context, whatever needs to be done. The flexibility is there. Next slide, please. And that's it. Yeah, so it's all about building trust, reducing waste, that insight that we can get from a system. That's it from me.
Thanks, Ian, and thanks everyone for the presentation. It was a really good overview of the whole project and the technologies. We have put a lot of hard work in since last 2.5 years. So on this note, I would like to hand it over to Rick to start our Q&A.
Thank you very much, everyone. And yeah, it's the wonders of technology, isn't it? And thank you for everyone persevering. I hope everyone else from the FSA side didn't have a reset in the middle of the presentation, as I did, when you're sort of listening and suddenly everything goes quiet and you think, what's happened? But we're all back online now. So yeah, so thank you very much for everyone for giving that sort of comprehensive overview of the things that have been going on. And actually, I think that's kind of one of the things that I got from sort of coming in for the project and looking at all the different technologies. Is initially when the project started, you saw these different building blocks being created. But I think what's really nice getting towards the sort of the back end of the project now is you're seeing how all these things can integrate together into a really sort of technology innovation, digital driven solution for supply chain tracking. So I've got a couple of questions and I think I'll sort of go through them and just sort of read them out, and then maybe the teams sort of can come back I think Glenn's already put some answers in, but I'll still go through them if and if anyone's got any others online, then please do add them up. So the first one here is how could this technology be beneficial or cause possible problems with tracing food fraud or crime? And a very pertinent and live issue for the FSA, food crime. So Glenn, did you want to sort of pick that one up again? You gave an answer. Or anyone else wants to chip in? Maybe some of our colleagues from IBM as well.
Yeah, I think the pertinent one is this is an overall system approach to obviously that security. So looking at obviously how the technology actually tags the devices. So I said in the chat, the UID for the unique identifier for RFID is the item that basically tracks all these things through the system. So that UID is very secure. It's very difficult to spam, not impossible, but it's at what point you want to do that. I think if Ian wants to grab in on this one, so a lot of the stuff that the Consus system and Ian's stuff does in the Food Trust is key in that element as well.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those challenges in that, you know, what's important with food security or any data security is the security of the data that's going into the system. But what I would say is because it's a shared ledger, we can see changes, we can do forensic analysis on that. If things deviate, then people can see those deviations. We can use AI to better monitor that. But I guess the biggest impact here is being able to act in an effective way. So, for example, if you do identify something that's a problem, then it makes it far easier to investigate because you've got that visibility. So there's always a risk in that people could always try to manipulate the system as they do, but the aim is to give enough transparency so that people can identify those anomalies to act upon them, and then being able to act effectively in a far more efficient way than what we have at the moment.
It's Clive Stevens from Cranswick. Yeah, I think our role in this project, again, as a responsible food manufacturer, even though, as I think I've said before, we've got very robust systems in, we have to go even further to give the governing bodies, consumers, customers, even more confidence, and that's what really gave us the sort of confidence to join this consortium. And the consortium brings together a lot of experts and also working in different supply chains, so we can see different issues in different supply chains. But basically, reducing waste is our key goal, and we see this as the next step in securing more sort of food security and food provenance. Bearing in mind we are at a proof of concept stage. Cranswick are facilitators in this type of end-to-end sort of supply chain.
Oh, you raised an interesting point there, Clive, which is all about reducing waste. And we've got two angles on this, and one is that we've got the sensors that can analyze the volatiles within the product to understand what the real quality of food is, but also we've got insight from a system that can say, okay, well, you've got all these products in this area that are nearing end of life, and that way you can act on them again to try and reduce that waste.
Yeah, I think also it gives us an opportunity to look at product quality as well as safety. So, as you say, having and tracking everything to its nth degree. We've been researching food discoloration for many years now, and there's no real silver bullet to it, but there's quite a lot of channels, as you'll all be aware, that it can go wrong. but I think we know where we need to focus on going forward, and SecQuAL enables us to allow the technology to catch up with the research that we've been doing and give us some sort of clear solutions going forward. And I think it's important to say as well, not just looking back, looking forward. We've engaged in some of our retail partners as well, and we've been trialing the sensors or tagging, I call it intelligent MAP. That's been going through trial processes through a couple of our retailers' distribution centres already. So I think there's a way to go, but yeah, it's great to be involved.
Excellent, thank you. Just moving on to some of the other questions. Question here, you mentioned the possibility of reusing packaging. Has this gone as far as looking at the reuse of these on final products? Again, maybe Glenn, you responded to that, but maybe you'd like to come in.
Yeah, I think what we've done is the focus on this was proof of concept, is not reusing that final package, but trying to bring that price point down. And like I said in the chat, we're looking at obviously bringing that point down so it is achievable for each pack. But the main thing in this is about the sustainability. So it's obviously the price point, and can these items be recycled or disposed of safely? So I think a lot of the work that AMD have been doing is in that reusable or recyclable or compostable type materials. So a lot of their inks and that sort of stuff are generating that. And with Pragmatic as well, their IC being based on a plastic instead of a semiconductor pushes that sustainability options up rather than just them all going to landfill.
Yeah, I can.
Come on
that. We could spend 3 days on recycling of food packaging materials. So ultimately, yes, some of these technologies could be used in. They could potentially be used in sorting technologies. So sorting waste and identifying which plastics and card and paper and polymers that are being recycled. There's an opportunity to do that because you could put a traceability record on the food packaging, not only the product itself, but also the packaging, to understand who made it, what the bill of materials are, etc., etc. One of the key bits for us is really the next stage. So we have started to talk to some of the food material packaging companies and looking at the various materials that are used in that process. And so the key bit for us is to be able to make digital technologies which have minimal carbon minimal carbon footprint or impact, or don't certainly degrade the recyclability of some of these materials. So I know that's a very active debate in the industry at the moment, but from what we can gather, talking to the packaging guys, things like modified atmosphere packaging is a very, very sophisticated product, actually, where control of gases and porosity are very important. So recycle it. So on the one hand, you've got the carbon footprint of the packaging materials themselves, but then on the other side, of course, you've got the cost of waste. So if your product goes off after 2 days, then obviously there's a kind of balancing cost on the other side. So it's a kind of trade-off between the two.
Yeah, that's a very good point, James. And actually, you know, we often talk about it as well, the unintended consequences. So, you know, everyone is this, you know, goes to a mad rush to reduce plastics or single-use plastics, and yet, actually, you know, they're often there for a very good reason. You've talked about modified atmosphere packaging and the importance of that, but also, you know, let's be clear. There's a massive role in protection of product from food safety and tampering and all sorts of things. So, you know, packaging is not evil. Packaging in the wrong place is evil, i.e. in the oceans. Moving on, Yeah, another good question. How can we encourage consumer buy-in of any of these new technologies and ensure that the tech is accessible to everyone and food is safe for everyone? So yeah, I suppose this is the next steps question, you know. How do we engage with people and make sure that they see this as something that's beneficial and not Big Brother snooping on them or something scary?
Yeah, one of the
how do we do that?
Things really is that the technology itself is an NFC tag, and the NFC reader is in everyone's smartphones already. So everyone's already got the technology required to scan these tags. So there's no buying required from like someone have to buy a physical device to scan the technology. It's just either an app or a web browser on the device. So that's the key part really, is we can make the investment of the technology to provide the tags into the packet, but everyone already has the capability to read those tags immediately. As far as the actual consumer buy-in, I've been speaking to a bunch of different consumers, different age ranges, and I found that especially the younger generations, but even including the middle generations, are very excited to see what we can do with this. The consumers are very, very in want of more information, more knowledge, where stuff comes from, how it was done in the first place, all the information they want to see, but we don't provide any of that currently. The best they can get currently is country of origin, and that's a code for a supplier that doesn't make sense to anyone. And from the people I've been speaking to, they want this. It's something they want but didn't know they could get. So I think if we get this out to people, there'll be some people that don't want to see it because it's just the same old. But there's a growing number of people who really want to see more information about where the food comes from, where the food products come from, and the fact that they're seeing that in other industries, but they haven't seen any of that in food yet, is going to drive any kind of adoption rates.
I mean, that's a fantastic point, and actually, you know, a lot of the research we do is all about, because labeling is the old classic. Oh, if there's an issue, put a label on something. But then a lot of the research is that actually people don't really read labels. But actually, if you were to, because you know, how big can your label possibly be to get all the information? But if you put new technology in, and you can, for those who are really interested and get a whole range of information, then potentially you see this moving from something that's supporting industry in terms of quality and waste into something that then can become a consumer benefit. Did anyone else have anything to add on that?
Yeah, just
Ian,
thinking.
yeah.
I mean, there's the possibilities are endless as well. So not only could you just scan that QR code and see the provenance of your product, but there's a whole world of other information you could get on that, like recipes, ideas, kind of storage guidelines as to how you should keep and maintain that product. So there's a good reason why consumers might want to use this.
Yeah, and I think actually that then brings in the next question there, which I think it's answered the question in terms of the applications more than just in the pilots here. But could you use this technology to pass on information about allergens in food, e.g., either because because they are ingredients or because the product may contain them, from one business to the next, and help them make sure the message gets to consumers? So I think actually, yeah, I think that's absolutely a really good application that wasn't the initial intention of the project, but the sort of place where you can go if you develop the technology. If it's cheap enough, as Glenn said, that you know, you're talking about sub pennies per packet, you then have the technology in people's smartphones. And okay, there's this whole thing about who has access to smartphones, and there's maybe a generation who don't, but they're probably not sort of people who are going to ask questions about some of these things. But maybe you could start to think about those applications. So you build the platform, you have the technology, and then you see proliferate into all sorts of different areas. Right. The next question there is the technology that sniff tests products. So that will be the black bear labels. Given spoilage and pathogenic organisms grow at different rates, how can you prove that these products are safe even if they are not spoilt? Now, I'm very conscious of the fact we don't have anyone from Black Bear, but is anyone prepared to take up that one on a technical point of view?
I don't mind having a quick go.
I was going to go on, Glenn.
I was just going to say.
I'll go then. Yeah. basically, what we've been doing at the moment is validating through gas volatiles. The actual system sort of checks on gas volatiles, and we are checking with standard food quality spoilage data. We're not into the arena on this project detecting pathogens. We've got other projects that we're sort of looking at, but it's really a freshness indicator on this project. Okay, Glenn?
Right. I was just going to add, obviously, what we're doing as part of this project is validating that these sensors work as tags. So Clive says that we've got a number of packs that go through his MAP process that are being validated at lab and through the entire supply chain. So obviously it's proving that freshness data for all this system.
Thank you very much. So I think the answer there is that part of this behind the scenes is this kind of validation against what is already happening in terms of putting on best before use by dates, and so this is trying to validate against the gold standard, if we say, that we're already doing, and seeing how that compares. So it's a very it's part of it is the validation and to make sure these technologies are robust. And I think the final question that I have is one that's linked to that as well. So fantastic overview of a really interesting program of work. So thank you all to the presenters there. On the freshness tags, are the scores binary or on a scale? Would be really interesting to see how this indicator and information from the product has come from influences both consumer purchasing behaviours, could potentially lead to more waste when people scan to find the best pack. Interesting. And retailers approach reducing prices as scores drop based on origin of project. So again, thinking about things that possible perverse data, but I definitely, this idea that you could end moving from sort of fixed sort of batch used by dates into a more dynamic used by dates, and actually every single pack will give you a safe, reliable use by in the future, rather than it being a general batch, which will mean you maybe have some outliers either side, or that you're overcautious and as a result you're actually wasting lots of perfectly good food because it misses the use by date, but it's actually not gone off. So there is interesting. But were any of those other points in that final question that anyone had any thoughts?
Yeah, I think Clive from Crunswick again. I think you're right, Rick, in terms of where we're going. I think a lot of the guys have said this is endless, but you've got to start somewhere, and that's where we are at the moment, really. So in terms of freshness, could we see, I don't know how far it would go, and I think, as somebody mentioned earlier, customer engagement, stakeholder engagement, there's a massive piece of work to be done on engaging the customer, and what level of security would we give the consumer. And I think you made a point, Rick, as well, that we're governed massively by fantastic sort of legislation and standards in the food industry, probably second to none in the world. But I think this project proves that you've only got to take the food waste in the UK. I think RAP's figures for 2021 were 9.5 million tonnes of food waste in the UK, when there's about 8.5 million in food poverty. I think this we have to be very careful, but I think it's responsible of us to research in this direction, and yeah, we see it potentially in the future, speaking to smart fridges, etc., on use by dates. Will we see use by dates in a different format? That sort of looking forward. But at the minute, we are right at the beginning of this process, and all this data gathering can only give us more food for thought for all the governing bodies, the manufacturers, to discuss in more detail, I think, the way forward. So this type of proof of concept project gives us a bridge. We're certainly not there yet, but it gives us a bridge to what could happen in the future. So I think some of those questions are far-reaching and really valuable to take on board, because it's going to help us develop even further. But a lot of them are not answered, just to, you know, deal with where we are in this point of time, and I hope that covers it.
But that was excellent. That was an excellent summary. Glenn.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. Obviously, there's obviously a question about the measure being a binary or a scale. So the measure is it's an ongoing measure, so it's the cumulative. So what the tag does is basically every time the tag is activated, that data is transferred up to the system through consoles into IBM and onto Black Bear system, and they come back with a freshness score for that pack. So every time it's scanned, you get more data from the packs. That AI will build and grow and will become more accurate as obviously time goes by. But it's not just it's off, or it's not. You will get a scaling use by date, if you like. I mean, I think we have talked about this leading into a different in consumer approach. Like the question says, will consumers look for the best pack? They probably will, but it also allows the retailers, because quite a bit of this waste is at retailer level, it allows the retailers to do dynamic pricing. So if they've got a pack that is decaying early and they want to obviously reduce that price, they may get a sale on that pack instead of wasting it.
Yeah, the only other thing about the scaling is when we scan the pack and we send that information off to the Black Bear AI to process it, the response we get back isn't a score value or a scale for anything. It's actually a number of days freshness. So the data we get back is 5 days remaining, 4 days remaining, and it counts down to the 0.
Thank you. Well, I'm very conscious of the time, and I just want to say that a massive thank you to everyone who from the SecQuAL team for taking the time out today to present to us. A massive thank you to everyone who's attended. I think we were up to 45 attendees, which was given this is the middle of August, I think will be very good. And as I've said, we will record this as well, so people will be able to access it. So hopefully others will view. And you know, if you've been on and you've seen this, you thought it was interesting, please flag it up to your colleagues and make sure that they get a chance to see it. As always, a huge thank you to the Food for Thought team, to Niall and Victoria for making this happen. They do this as on top of their day jobs, so they do it as a labour of love. So thank you very much to them. And as I said, my final thoughts are, as always, I've found this project fascinating. I'm not a technologist as such. I'm a pathologist by training, and looking at the technology and seeing how it integrates is fantastic. And I tell you what it does for me is it makes me think about what the future might look like. And I think Clive and others have made that point that this is proof of concept, but you can start to see, and people in the questioning are starting to see ideas forming about, well, could you use it for this? And could you use it for that? And, you know, that's how innovation really works. You build something, you develop it, and then it goes off in different directions as people innovate and see different applications. So yeah, this is fantastic. This is a vision of maybe not tomorrow, but maybe in the future of how we will do things. And I think to all my FSA colleagues, I'd just like to say, think about this and think about, you know, as Clive said, we work within guidelines, we work within regulations, statutory limits, etc. But how could we do something different, and how could we innovate in that space and do things to both, you know, make sure we protect consumers, which is our day job, but also protect the environment and also make the UK a more innovative place to live. So with that, I will say thank you to everyone again, and we can all go our merry ways. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.